We're the last
We're
session.
the last session, so we want to make the most of it. I'd like to welcome you guys all out here. Please, if you want a seat up to the front, those are the expensive seats. Come on up and take them. You'll be able to read the board better. And then make sure you guys sign the roll. If you're any latecomers come in, since they're not here, they'll sign the roll when they get in. This session is going to be an emphasis on construction developments and the elements of 3D design, and we're calling it intelligent design and construction, which I think encompasses what we're trying to do more than just 3D. When I think 3D, I think of just glasses. So I like the intelligent design and construction. And we're going to talk about how design data, including 3D models, can be used during construction. I don't know if you guys were here yesterday. That was part 1. Today is part 2. Is it Tuesday? I don't even know what day it is. So if you guys were here Tuesday, you're at day 1. So Tom Roylance is trying to get a hold of me. Is he in the room? Hi, Tom. Presenters today are Michelle Page. She's a state construction engineer. She's right over there. George Lukes with pre-construction, standards design engineer. We have Lance Greer. Is he here? Lance? Well, when you see a guy come in ready to present, that'll be Lance Greer with WW Clyde. We have Fred Daring with, he's the deputy pre-construction engineer. And so we'll turn it over to Michelle.
Thank you. Put this one down. So how many of you guys made it to the first session on Tuesday and saw this in reverse order with the parents? You guys did on the front row. A few more of you? Okay, good. Not too many repeats, but the front of this has a few slides that, and obviously the whole presentation looks and feels the same. That was intentional. George and I have probably spent the last 2.5, 3 years trying to integrate construction and pre-construction a lot more. And this is just one of those areas where we want to be transparent across. We don't want to have this big void of, well, that's what the designers did. And, it's always their fault that things go wrong in construction. They just do it out of Google Earth. We want to own a piece of that in pre-construction. So that's why there's a lot of commonality, a lot of look and feel of there shouldn't be this huge void that we have to virtually bridge across when we go from design to construction. We also don't want to lose the contractors in that void. So throughout this presentation, towards the end when we ask, what can you guys be doing to help us with this? Try and be thinking of any way that we can integrate folks sooner. Any way we can get information out there in advance of a project. Any way we can get communication to a project team as they're doing the design or during bidding of a project, earlier communication if there's a problem. All of those things are things that George and I have been trying really hard to work on, to update standards, to update our manual of instructions for our designers and our crews so that we're more seamless between the two. So this is our attempt. Will take us a while to change. A lot of folks say, what is intelligent design? We started out with 3D modeling, and a lot of folks going, well, what's a 3D model? And we decided to back out even further because our first view of a 3D model being the legal document became so much more. We couldn't put all of our contract language, our specs, all of our details, all of those things buried within a model. It just didn't seem like, at least for step 1, maybe that was the right thing to do, that we had to take this in steps that would still seem familiar to both the construction folks that are the contractors and our crews, our consultants that are involved. So we took the big umbrella picture, if you will, of what are the models, what are the surfaces, what are the design details, what information documents should be provided. And we dug into that a little further and we said, well, let's see what the benefits are. Why would we want to do this? And for design, we really said, well, we want to create a collaborative environment. We all work at our desk anyway, for the most part, in front of our computer screen. How could I connect to that information? How could it be live? How could I know what the latest version of a document or a file was and that was the one that I was using? How could I click on a pipe and know the details of that pipe, whether it was the diameter, the type of pipe, maybe some design decisions around why it was located where it was at. Those are a lot of the philosophical discussions we've had of what the benefits would be in having an intelligent design. Electronic reviews, changing how we do reviews, where we actually sit down and can zoom in and out of a design. Improving those visualization tools so we're no longer relying, I'm going to say we still will a lot on as many of those mentors and coaches as we have out there as we can get our hands on. But as we go across this generational gap and have a lot of new employees out there without that level of expertise, how do you show them what has always been in someone else's mind of angles and approaches and pick points and interfaces of a bridge and a roadway? The visualization side of this is going to be huge for someone's first day out on the job site. Increased involvement and availability during construction, being able to have that designer on call. Get them out there, have them look at a site situation where things just don't seem to be working, and hopefully we'll catch the majority of those up front, but there's always an unknown that crops up. Utility we didn't see, a right-of-way parcel that was someone else's that we thought we had purchased, whatever it is that we can immediately access the person that can help us with that. That's the intelligence behind the design we want to rely on, as well as the handoff that we kind of talked about, the paperless advertising, having any design data that's complete, releasing that as early as possible, giving it to our bidders, not just our selected bidder. All of that should improve our bidding environment out there, should make it more reliable on the data we provide, give them more time to soak in the data, maybe analyze it a little further than what traditionally they've been able to do at bid. And then during construction, have it real time, have it in a cloud-based environment. That would give everybody an opportunity to say, hey, have you looked at this part of the file? You can save an image or a view and send it. Version control again, compatibility and syncing, integrated systems. These are all terms you'll hear a lot of discussion about. Geospatial locating. Are we a GIS? Can we, on our screen in a mobile application, know where we're at? If we're taking photos, can that northing easting be embedded on the photo? And is there a way to convert the GIS to a stationing? Those are all the types of questions that we're asking and being able to convert from one to the other very easily and seamlessly. So we pushed it a little deeper into the presentation, but it took us all of that questioning to get to our goals. Those goals being this quick and easy transfer of the design information to construction. There's a lot of fears there in doing that we, going back to my time as a designer, did some doodles in a draft design file before we ever got to the actual design, saved that out and deleted all that ancillary information. And the thought now is, what of that initial information is valuable in the final design? Are there Excel files that show calculations that should maybe be provided? Those are some of those questions we'll ask. Fully electronic access to all the data. Where is it posted? How does everybody have access? How do you do view rights versus edit rights? And really the big thing here is, how do you advertise and make this all contractual? How do you tie a contract document together and have people informed all the way down to a little small subcontractor of this is where it's located, and they can easily pull it up and find it, whether it's in the model, whether it's in a separate contract document, wherever it is. And the ability to revise and resubmit with as constructed data. So we'll talk a little bit about tolerances, and we've done this forever. It's nothing new as far as what the field is allowed to do versus what requires a designer. But we're going to learn more about what those tolerances are of when you need a plan sheet recreated or a model reran. What technology exists today? These are the basics. We have Bentley out there. Our contractors, a lot of them use Autodesk. They use Trimble. They use Topcon. They use ArcGIS. We're using a lot more ArcGIS than we have in years past. You dig in a little deeper, there's even more mobile applications out there. Are they where we want them to be? Not quite. I think there's a lot of emphasis on a designer going out to the field and viewing his design in the field and verifying that design, but it's not in a format that a brand new Transtech could step out on that grade and look at and go, oh wow, I have all of these toggles around all of the screen across the bottom. I zoom in. One of our demos we did in the training room, zoomed in, and I won't disclose names, I'll keep that protected, but got in under a bridge, couldn't get out. Well, I can see the bottom of the girder really, really well, but I can't see anything else. That's not what we want to happen. So is it taking us a little bit to find a tool, to wish for more Bobs in the department and this technical expertise to simplify a MicroStation view, an Autodesk view? Absolutely. But it's all for a good reason, that we take it a little slow to make sure it's usable, that it's very easy, it's intelligent in the sense that it's a point and click, it's a zoom in, zoom out. So bear with us as we try to find that out. There's a few up here that are 2D. You know, you may say, why is OnStation on there, or why is a Bluebeam, or a SketchUp that's just sketching a PDF. Those are tools that are available today for free or very little cost on a project that you can be using the PDF already in a fully electronic environment. And we encourage that, because what it does is it takes maybe an inspector or an engineer who's always worked off of a hard copy, and it gets them in the digital age. Gets them working off of an iPad or a laptop or even a cell phone, using it in a way they never thought they could use it. You guys saw FaceTime in the presentations while you were here. That's a great, great tool when someone says, why are they doing it this way? And you go, why are they doing what this way? And they're trying to describe it in words on the phone. They can flip the phone around, show you by video feed. Well, they're laying the bar out like this, and I thought the spacing was supposed to be a different way. Oh, well, go look at this detail, and that portion of the bridge is a transition portion, and it is different, and it is okay for it to be different. Having the ability to have more of those conversations is why there's intelligence needed. Lots of applications we'll dig into. Maybe just by a raise of hands, if anybody has comments, we would like to know what other applications you guys have seen out there than maybe what we listed and what you're using. Anyone? Alan, what are you guys using? Are you using a little bit of everything and anything depending on the need? That's unfortunate when I see a familiar face back there.
Yeah, we use everything.
Everything. Got it all covered.
I have no clue.
No clue, he says.
I'm the younger guy here.
There you go.
Trimble Business Center, we'll be getting out the MicroStation, that, to get it out to something else. Autodesk, LTV.
Data quality ever an issue for you?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of the big ones that we're looking at is how can we export and import back in with good quality resolution, not losing that data integrity. Something that we need help with. We need input. We need testers out there. As we roll forward with some pilot projects, that's where the questions are going to be focused is how do we make this successful? George, do you maybe want to take a minute?
Thanks, Michelle. Is this working? Yep. Get out the light. So we have a couple of projects in almost all regions where we're trying to develop the 3D as much as we possibly can. Up in Region 1, I-15 North Ogden to Brigham. Looking to see, is Chris in here? No, Chris I think is leading on that, and they're doing as much as they can to make that a 3D deliverable. In region, go ahead. Whipple. And I'll kind of go through who the leads are in the regions and then who's doing these projects. On I-215, for a long time, it was Andrew Jordan. He's in Region 3 now. And I think it's Jeremy and Phil, if I'm not mistaken, who are now leading that. There's also SR-68 123rd to Bangor, and I think that one is maybe on hold at the moment. Is that right? In Region 3, I think that this is 2017 construction, is that right, Dilshad? Do you know? And that's going to go as much of a full 3D as possible. And then in Region 4, and where we have the asterisks, those are where we're looking to advertise the model as the legal document. SR20 is the one that's coming up most. We're looking for that to be 2016. SR10 is going to be a 2017. And just really quickly, SR20 is a project that we would never, ever, ever, ever do CMGC, but we know that even though it's a simple project, that we're going to have issues with the model as the contract document. And we're in that process right now where Clyde's on board, and we've already kind of given electronic files back and forth to see what's going to happen. Bentley and Trimble have a relationship, and there's an ICM model now that's supposed to go directly from Bentley to Trimble, and it's just not working the way we'd expect it to. So with that said, it's not going to keep us from doing what we want to do. It's just another roadblock, or not a roadblock, challenge And we'll keep pressing forward on that and do as much as we can. If for whatever reason we were not able to get to the model being the contract document, we'll take those lessons learned, we'll tackle it, figure out what we need to do, and address that on SR10 and then on 123rd to Bangerter. Some of the other regions are also maybe looking at one item as a contract document to try and get some lessons learned. And those are not listed up there right now, but those are some other ones we're going with too. SR 34 in St. George, CMGC, same thing. I think that one may be at least some line items, but full 3D deliverable. So, lessons learned to date. Is Lance here? All right, we'll pretend like he's here. So let me, one of the things that Lance and I have worked on is early on in summer of 2014, we had probably 10 or 15 projects where what we were doing was offering the project files, the electronic files, to the contractors as for information only. We made those available. Bob created a real easy link that would make all of the files available that the designer had marked as electronic file room and then CAD, I believe. And once that would do it, it'd make it super easy for contractors to download that information. We made sure that the contractors knew that those files were available at award. There was a couple that were actually at advertising. And Michelle and I and some others went to all of those projects and kind of did some debriefs to find out what worked, what didn't, and what needed to be changed. Well, one of the things we found was that our control points were not as accurate as they would need for a file transfer from design to construction. So Lance suggested that what we would need to do is kind of revise our survey manual, and Paul took the lead on that. And, you know, I don't know that there was a lot of tolerances that were out. We just probably weren't enforcing them on the pre-construction side because that transfer wasn't as important as it is now. So that was one of the huge lessons we learned. And this is the part that Lance would talk about, so I'll talk about it at the moment. But when he was on Silver Creek to Wanship, we went through, we did what I would call a standard pre-construction survey, but when he got it, the control points were not, they weren't leveled. And so when he looked at it, at the beginning of the canyon, it's below the control point like this, and at the end, it's up like this. So he had to reshoot all the control points and get the accuracy down to 100th of a foot or 200ths of a foot. Kind of took all the stuff in Open Roads, or I think it was Inroads on that project, and redid it, put it into Autodesk, and then into Trimble. And he ended up doing, I think this last summer, the westbound side as stringless paving that was done with the model only, and it was really a cool operation, and that was probably one of the better lessons learned to date that we were able to implement. Early coordination and review opportunities. I think one of the things that we're still in the process of lessons learned is we don't have great tools at the moment for doing that, and we're trying to find out what's out there and what we can use. But what's going to be ideal is when we get to the point where instead of having to come to a meeting with plan sets, you're able to come and review the model and make it an easier way to look at things so that we're not looking at grammar and stuff like that, but really looking at what the project needs. I talked about the survey, the CAD and the other UDOT provided files. Right now, probably 60 or 70% of our time in pre-construction is spent on plan sheets. And what we hear from construction site is there's a lot of stuff on those plan sheets that really isn't needed per se if there's another way to transform or to transfer that information. So one of the things we may look at is how we will produce our plan sets when models are provided either for information or as the legal document until we get to the point where our construction tools are where they need to be. On-site coordination with UDOT. This is going to become, I think, one of the most critical pieces. So one of the things we've been talking about in the last week or two is on SR20. You know, we're going to get to the point where we're going to have on-site coordination. And we haven't figured out what the right way for the designer to be in the field is. Do we have the contractor be responsible to update the model? Is the designer the one that updates the model? How are those conversations had? How do we make it so that we don't turn into a stagnation and have the model become an issue and we just close the project down, but instead move forward and still get the revised model signed? So there's a lot of opportunities and challenges here, and I think a little bit later on in this presentation, we'll talk about some of the things that we're dealing with right now on SR20 and SR10 and how we're thinking we're going to move forward, and some groups that we'd like to form to try and address some of these challenges. So we talked a little bit about these survey tools. Right now, we've got these available. Like I said, Paul led this group. It was a pretty big effort that took, gosh, what was it, maybe 4, 5, 6 months?
October to May.
Yeah, and it was really a good coordination between industry and UDOT, and we've got a really good document now. So you can see that's available on our website. And how this was created was that Paul went and put the group together. They met initially probably every week or two, and then at the end there were a couple of weeks where it was every day for 8 hours trying to knock this out, and it was a huge effort and ended up being a really quality document. So you want to go to the next slide, Michelle? So some of the changes that are in the document now mostly are tolerances for the most part, but it's also addressing technology. Some of the issues that we've had are based on GPS technology. Great technology, but in some cases, if it's not leveled properly, you're not going to get the accuracy that you need to be able to transfer the information from pre-construction to construction. Here's some other additional changes that were done. And I'm going to kind of rifle through these so that we can get to some other things. We covered this in the first session, but I think right now what the basic message is, we need to use the right tool for the right job. And that's going to be a challenge as well, of how we define on projects what the right tools are and what the right direction is. And those are some of the things we're tackling.
Maybe for members of industry, just so you know, where we're kind of leaning with this right now is more performance-based, that we really want to leave the tools at your discretion to choose what you're going to use, but the tolerance may define that. And if you go to set up your GPS and you can't meet the tolerances, then you're back into, different tool based on the tolerance. That's why the tolerances were revised and looked at, was based on all the projects we did the electrical or the electronic documents on.
Right. I think another thing to keep in mind here is no one knows what we're going to end up with when we get to where we want to be. And when I say that is, we're going to have some serious challenges between now and then, and it's going to take a group effort to kind of figure these out and figure out how we get there.
Okay, Fred?
I'll give this to Fred Darian.
Thanks, George.
Thanks, George. So what are we currently working on? Well, there's a list up on the screen. Been doing a lot of work with industry, both the pre-construction surveying, pre-construction design, on the construction side of the house, on what tool, and software developers, and what tools are available for us to use for our folks. Right now, one of the real concerns is the inspectors in the field. How are they going to be able to use a 3D model in the field without a set of paper plans? We're envisioning some kind of a tablet where we can view that model, be able to, maybe with a rover, go out, stab the ground. This is what the contractor built. How does that compare to what the model said it should be? And to be able to do our QCQA that way. One of the biggest challenges then, okay, suppose they run across field differences that require a change in design. How does that model get updated to reflect that change? If we're using the model as the basis of payment, if we're comparing as built to the model and we're changing something, that model is going to have to be updated to reflect a new design. What's that process going to be? Who's going to be responsible for doing that? How does that fit in with the change order process? And then that continues on right into the as-constructed drawings. Because we want our as-constructed drawings and all that asset data to be accurate. That tends to imply that we've got to update that model again. So to answer some of these questions, to help us formulate some of these questions, we had a risk workshop back in the fall. We had, some of you were there, we had members of industry there, people from out of state were there helping us do that. And we identified some key risk items that we need to address. That first one I just talked about, changing the model. One of the risks that we really identified was missing opportunities. We're currently modeling projects in 3D, and in 2014, we gave that information to the contractors on an awful lot of projects. Last year, that fell off. We didn't provide that information as much as we had the previous year, yet that's a great opportunity for us to learn how that data is used by the contractors, what we can do to make that data better, that handoff routine. So one of the things we really need to work on is providing those electronic files, add advertising, or at least add awards so that the contractor can use them, preferably add advertising. Standardization and compatibility, this speaks to the exponential seemingly number of different software platforms and the need to translate from one to the other. Somehow we have to define some compatibility, some common formats that can be used for this. We talked about QC/QA. How do you QC/QA an electronic model? That's one of the things we're working on with the SR20 project. And then one of the big things that we identified was legal liability. We know that's an issue, and quite frankly, we haven't really delved into that too much. That's going to be coming up soon as we look to advertise some of these projects with electronic document as the legal document. We know we're going to have to get the lawyers involved in it and say, okay, how are we going to ensure that everybody is covered by that? Next. So, this is one initiative that UDOT is working on. There are several others out there which, as we proceeded, it became apparent that these are all tied together. You know, it started out for us as 3D design, but then we've got our entire move towards GIS that the department is undertaking. How does 3D modeling tie in with GIS? I know Region 4 is making a lot of efforts, making a lot of strides in getting information out of CAD and into GIS. That's great for the drawings, but with the new iModels that are coming out with the new Bentley product, Open Roads, that translation isn't working. And so we've been literally working with Esri and Bentley to try and figure out how we can get that transfer to work. Construction's been doing this whole Masterworks conversion. That's something that's been going on for a year and a half, 2 years now. The field book module is getting rolled out or soon, and then they're moving to develop the bid system and materials database. How are we going to link all of that to 3D modeling and advertising? How are we going to link that with the field portion where you can view the model on a tablet? What's that interface with Masterworks got to be? Asset management, one of our real, I'm going to skip one here. One of our outcomes that we see for this is this existing conditions database. I guess that's the database formerly known as the feature inventory. Right now, asset management, Stan Burns' group, go out and they run mobile LiDAR down every road, both directions, every other year. They have a company that goes out and extracts all the assets. By assets, I mean guardrail and barrier and signs and signal poles, striping, shoulder width, pavement area, number of lanes, width of shoulder. They extract all of this out of this mobile LiDAR run that they take. We know all that information about the projects we're building, right? Why do we need to build it and then have them go out and scan it and go through this effort of extracting it? Why can't we take that data out of our intelligent design and update the asset database without having to go through those intermediate steps? That's our goal in this whole thing, is to be able to update that asset database directly from the construction documents. And then that is all displayed and Stan's developing user interfaces through GIS. So that's one reason we've got to get GIS working. Okay, Michelle.
Okay, I think I'll take this one back. This kind of gives you a flavor of where we've been, where we're at, and I want to give you more of a flavor of where we're headed. You saw our pilots that we listed. A lot of those will start up in 2016, 2017. This will be where we can address those conversion challenges. I see Sam out there. He's going to be on the cutting, hopefully not bleeding edge of this, where we figure those out. That's why it's CMGC, you know. We used to laugh in construction that if you get that simple, easy job, you run like hell, because they're not simple and easy. Sam's kind of got a little bit of a tiger that way because we threw technology at it. And we said, yeah, it's a pretty simple design. I think our quotable from Sam was, there's not very often that he gets to plan in hand that his design is done. Is that the right quote, Sam? It was kickoff. So it was even before then. He was at his kickoff meeting and his design was done. So that's the level of complexity, but we also have to know that that's the level of talent we have down in Region 4 working on this. Clyde is our contractor that we're working with there. They're already doing their reviews, their cross-sections, their analysis in the CAD platform, so they can give us feedback within our own system, as well as looking how it interfaces with their systems. That's the whole reason that CMGC is there. That will move forward as we look at interfacing with the Trimble Business Center, TopCon, Leica, Autodesk, all the other apps that are out there that different folks start using. For us, it's compatibility. What's the consistent platform that we can live with and exchange? We started looking at XML. We're at ICMs now as far as the individual model or / models. There can be multiple models on a project depending on the complexity of whether it's a road with bridge, a road with multiple alignments, say ramp configurations. All of those play into that complexity of the model and the data. That as constructed data, getting some contractor submittals back. So looking at SR20 and saying, what was it about the model we provided that you had to tweak and change? And are those just acceptable tolerances that we're good with, that they've done for years already to meet performance-based requirements on pavement smoothness, on getting their grades set? All of those things that we already have AMG out there in the field. We'll see it even more. I think it started out, first piece of equipment I saw on was probably a dozer, then pavers, then graders. The list probably goes on and on from there of the different automated machine guidance or at least information available for an equipment operator. We'll jump ahead in a little bit and show you where it actually is today technology-wise. But that final record and handoff to maintenance is an area we haven't dug into, as well as I'm going to say our relationship with pre-construction. That's where construction's going to have to shift next. So in the years ahead, we're going to have to spend some more time with our maintenance folks, with our trans-techs that are working on our construction projects, that then inherit that as a region corridor to maintain. How do they remember that special feature that was installed and where the installation product came from? We haven't been really good at giving a maintenance book to our maintenance sheds and saying, here's the job we just built, here's all the unique bolts and assemblages and parts and where we got them from, here's the type of pipe, if you need a piece to replace, you can't really buy this product off the shelf, we had to order it from so-and-so, here's the lead time. To have that type of intelligence and to be able to hand that off is huge. So opportunities there and moving ahead, as well as station and offset doesn't mean a lot to a maintenance guy. Giving him a GIS location, being able to see where he is by milepost, those types of things, that will have a lot more information to him than a station and offset that construction uses when they have that control established. So we learned some of our biggest learning curves when we hosted the Olympics here, and I wanted to share a little clip with you about what Japan has experienced as they prep for 2020 Olympics. On pictures around the video, you'll see drone technology. I know Randy Wallen's doing a session next door to us with drones. We have contractors that are using drones today. There's a lot of restrictions around those. And then some of the automated equipment, as well as some folks going to autonomous equipment. Here's that video, just came out last week.
Greetings, citizens of the internet. Welcome to Tomorrow Daily, the best geek talk show in the known universe. I'm Ashley Esqueda, and this is our temporary set while our new set gets built. But for now, let's set the headlines. Komatsu Komatsu is one of the largest construction companies in the world, and they're facing an issue that may affect the 2020 Tokyo Olympic Games. They don't have enough workers to operate heavy machinery, so they're turning to drones to guide their robotic bulldozers and stuff. The service is called Smart Construction, and because of Japan's aging population, meaning less able-bodied people to operate heavy machinery, Komatsu devised a way to operate those heavy machines by remote-controlled drones, who map out work areas and update them in real time as the bulldozers and other vehicles move dirt and other debris around a site. Komatsu still needs a couple of people on the ground to ensure that they can handle problems if they arise or if anything needs to be fixed. But those people don't actually require the same kind of training a full-blown machine operator would need. In addition, surveying sites with drones dramatically decreases the amount of time it takes to complete the mapping and also drops the margin of error considerably. So while Japan still has an aging population and that's going to be an issue going forward, it's pretty awesome that Komatsu's answer to that problem was, hey, let's just throw a bunch of drones and robots at it and see what happens. Okay, so going from one Olympic city to another, there's a pair of VJs in.
So they'll start going on some other technologies that are out there, but ENR posted this with the web link last week in coordination with Verge. And then obviously YouTube always has access to these videos, so you can go out and view that yourself. But it was very interesting that a lot of times when we go digging, we think, well, this doesn't exist out there, and then we're surprised by something that exists somewhere else. Well, I don't think there's anyone in this room who hasn't heard of this piece of equipment already. And then to find out that the technology, the company that they hired to come up with the technology to interface with their equipment is located in California. And they went to work in Japan for the Olympics because of our legislative restrictions on drone use here. So it's really tying of our own hands by our own legislation that it's going to take a lot of folks asking a lot of questions to get some changes to occur to get to this vision. But there's someone else out there doing it, and that's going to make it more available for us to do it here in the United States. I think we're seeing that in many corners of the market, and I think as more and more folks push those envelopes, we'll have more access to this technology. So even though it's easy to maybe get frustrated or discouraged at times going, oh, we thought we were going to be that project that did it all or that set that milestone, every step we take on a project that's different than what we did on the previous project is still a massive step we need to celebrate. And I think that's really what we wanted to focus on today, is that those deliverables aren't the, I'm going to say, the massive perfect project. It's the things that the Andrew did on 215, and there's two Andrews on that. There's a lot of folks that came together that said, we have this vision, we have this view, and they're able to capture a portion of that, and that portion is worthy of celebration. The same being able to hand that off to the next region and the next project. I loved that part of the design presentation the other day where we got to see that we're not reinventing the wheel with each project that comes along. We're finding ways to share that information with one another. See if I can get my presentation back up here. Ah, you're right. Doesn't screw in. And when I escaped down, it went all the way out. Just skip to the next one so it doesn't start clear over. But this is really where we wanted to say, what can you be doing? You know, we have each of our agencies out there that we work with. We work with AGC, we work with ACEC, we work internally with a lot of our folks. We've had our workshops. Where we're at now is we're actually scheduling some one-on-ones with our contractors to go to their office of business to sit down and have them show us their Trimble business centers, their systems that they've invested in, and how they're using the technology we provide in a way that now we can understand from their perspective so we can begin some of the standardization of the release of the data. That's what's coming up in the months ahead for us. But if you haven't been involved and you want to be involved, contact George or myself or Fred, Bob, Paul, whatever corner of this, whether it's survey, whether it's CAD, whether it's what can we do more in the design side. We're talking about as early as plan in hand and PS&E, when certain parts of the design are complete, releasing those as informational documents. Those are the type of new things that have a lot of value that folks on the other side, the construction side, the contracting side, are asking for. What does the project look like? What does it entail? Can I get a look ahead at it? If we can provide that data up front, we'll get more feedback to prevent those clash detections that we talk about, for those quantity overruns that something just doesn't feel right. We talked about VEs over in Anna's session this morning in value engineering, that if the data's there and the analysis can be made by the contractor up front, he can either submit some RFCs or come right in the gate as soon as awarded and say, here's some additional things that I've seen. It improves all of our worlds. It reduces those conflict managements we get into, the length of those risk registers, just by sharing the information. That's really why we've changed the title of this to intelligence, is we want everybody to have the same level of intelligence, and it will grow. That saying knowledge is power is true. That what starts out as a little kernel, everybody throws their kernel in, and you've got a whole bag of popcorn once you heat it up. I mean, it's massive. Can't contain it. So that's what'll get us off the ground. Those are the years behind us, where we're at and where we're headed. Any questions?
What is the future of PDBS?
It's dying. It's dead. No. It is very, very archaic. If you've heard of Power Builder, that's the platform it was written in. So way, way, way back in the beginning, before I ever took my first computer programming code. We are replacing probably 70 to 80% of it with Masterworks. Majority of that is in the field book rollout that goes out July 1st. We are looking at other areas of it. Rob?
And we're hoping to replace the rest of it also. I mean, we see it going away within a matter of a year or two, hopefully.
So it definitely is having some struggles. So if you see any resistance from us to do major reprogramming, that's why. There is one DTS employee that understands the code to reprogram it. That's it. So, any other questions? PJ?
I have a on-the-spot question, but do you know what the timeline is of when we might have something in the field that they can start using, like maybe on Region 4 after they get the 3D?
We're sitting down next week to talk through that. I'll be honest, we've been resistant. There's a couple of these 2D options that exist out there to live in that fully electronic world if we choose to. I think we're going to do everything we can to get into this 3D world and play. We've got some leadership discussions that are happening. They're putting some pressure on players we already have contracts with. Them to say maybe aren't where we want them to be. And hopefully that's PC enough that we're just exercising as much influence as we can. George and I were talking about this the other day on a project. It doesn't seem like that big of a dollar amount, but when you start talking about the number of projects we do, it's not just $1 million idea here. We're talking about $1 billion idea that we've got at least 4 or 5 players pounding on our door saying, let me come play. We're entertaining those conversations right now. To get out on a project, we're actually going to sit down Tuesday and talk about what we can do for 215. And the files that they have available, what we can help Region 2 with. From there, we'll quickly move to SR20. Those are our challenges right now, and they're daily. We meet pretty frequently, pretty often, and we sit down and say, okay, this is broke, can we fix it? If we can't fix it, what are the other 3 options we have to choose from? So a little bit, I'm going to say, of this integration right now, that it's going to be pieces and parts moving for a little while.
Yeah, you know what, Michelle, let me add to that. And I don't know if Monty's in here today, but Monty Aldrich has suggested that we're going to have issues on projects. And it needs to have a timely response and not a central response, so to speak. It needs to be done on a project, got to be done now. His suggestion was to put together kind of a technical group that would be, not a huge group, but some that can not only help to solve the problem or go to the resource, but also know what's happened on other projects so that we don't continue to address the same projects over and over without having solutions. So I think that's going to be part of it too, PJ, is when we get in the field and we start needing to have answers to, hey, I've got this electronic device and I need to look at this and it's not there, that we can address those quickly too. Because those are project things that you can't just go, okay, if you get back to me in 2 months, it'll be fine. It has to be that afternoon. So these are all challenges we're trying to work on, and I don't know that there's a good solution right now.
So we are looking at that project speed as well as a program speed. the project speed, can we pull the other lead designers in the other regions to help tackle a project issue? So it's not one project designer doing it by himself. Can he bounce the ideas off of his other team members in other parts of the state, as well as looking at possible consultant options? We've talked about for the big issues that are just, they create that roadblock on a project. We have to set it aside. Who tackles that roadblock? Because if we don't have the expertise in-house, there's someone else out there. We've toyed with like the Sense of the World, bringing in a larger consultant that's done it on the BIM side. That's what we've got to get in place. But the ideas are out there, and now we're looking to implement in the weeks ahead. Marco?
So what level of projects here are we going to be using this format here? Because a lot of our projects are just orange book, purple book, where there's no CAD design.
Okay, so this.
We're not using those on those projects then?
The simple answer for all of that is whatever electronic media you have, that's intelligence that's still of value to a contractor. So we would ask you to look at everything you have, whether you've drawn alignments on a Google Earth, whether you've done calcs in a spreadsheet, whether you've exported data out from PDBS to generate quantities, that you look at providing that data. And then from there, as you've used other tools like CAD and developed your alignments, you've developed surfaces, you've ran SUDA, whatever it is, that you provide those files as well. So it is scalable. It isn't, that's why we went a little bit away from 3D model. You don't develop a full 3D model on every single project you do as far as those preservation projects go. But there's technology there that you can pass on, or data you can pass on.
Yeah, and here's another part of that. Rob and I went to a design and behavior conference last summer, 2014, and on their preservation projects, they do provide the survey information so that the mills can be run off of automated machine guidance and things like that. So right now, our orange and purple books don't have, in fact, I think we don't do survey on them. So it may be something that we have to revisit and figure out when we're going to have, and I'm not going to say necessarily a 3D model, but information we can give to the contractor that will allow them to use automated machine guidance. Lance had talked about on a project on 84, it was a Purple Book project, we didn't do survey, and he had to go out and create his own survey for the entire project so he could use automated machine guidance. So that's another thing we'll have to address.
Any other questions out there? Okay, well, no reason to keep you here if you guys don't have a ton of questions. Hope you enjoyed the conference. Thank you.